Tottenham fought back from 2-0 down to salvage a point at the Amex, but was it a comeback to be proud of or a wake-up call? Thomas Frank also made some bold calls with the lineup. Xavi Simons left on the bench and Udogie returning to the 11. And one of them decisions nearly backfired. But after a shaky start, Spurs did show fight, resilience, and a small bit of quality when it mattered. So was this a point gained or 2 points dropped? Let's break it all down. What went wrong? What went right? This is your Spurs post-match reaction. Let's get straight into it. Jack, what's your immediate reaction to that 2-2 draw? Is it a point gained or 2 points dropped? And given the comeback, how do you see it?
I think you've been a calmer head about this game than I have, and I think you've probably been better at looking at it as a whole. My immediate reaction felt like 2 points dropped, mostly because the 2 goals we conceded were kind of our own doing. You know, it wasn't anything Brighton was doing that was really amazing or anything. They were 2 goals we should not have conceded, really. And then I felt like we were knocking on the door pretty much the whole game, really, during periods, and felt like the better team for the whole game. So my immediate reaction felt like that's 2 points dropped. But the fact that we came back from 2-0 down and haven't won at the Amex in a long time, I think 24, 48 hours from now, I'll think it's a point gained.
No, look, I think me heading into the game, Jack, I sort of alluded in the pre-match build-up that I don't like going to the Amex. You know, it's a tricky game. If you're 10% off it, Brighton will punish you. And, you know, the first 30-odd minutes, it was the case. But I think, you know, and when I take that into account, that I thought it was going to be a difficult place to go, the fact that we were 2-0 down, you know, inside the first half, I think, you know, bigger picture when I look at it, I do think it's a, you know, it's a good point to take away. And I think there is positives in terms of showing some resilience and some fight back. However, going into the game, I was expecting Brighton to be a much more tougher opposition. I thought we made them look bang average, to be honest with you. And I think that's where the disappointment comes out. And that's where I think when I look at it as a whole, I do think it's 2 points dropped, but I do think there's some positives to take from it.
Yeah. No, sorry. No, I think in the immediate reaction from the watch along, I think you did a better job of seeing the whole perspective of the game than maybe I did, to be fair.
I just look at it last year when we're 2-0 down. I just don't believe we had that bounce back ability. As soon as we conceded last year, I was turning around to you, texting you, Jack, turn off the watch along. It's over. There's no point in this today. You know, whereas I do think there's a lot of positives to take from being 2-0 down. Also, away from home, we've been abysmal for years. You know, so the fact that we've showed this bounce back ability on the roll, I think, should be a huge positive to take out from this. But Jack, at 2-0 down, I must ask you, what was running through your mind? Did it feel like the game was slipping away, or did you trust that this team would find a way back? Because weirdly enough, at 2-0 down, I was sort of the opinion I think the game's gone, but I still think you had the belief, if I remember correctly.
I'm a bit split because I felt like we were creating the chances regularly to try to get back into the game. It felt like the heads didn't really drop with the players. They were still trying to get back into the game the whole time. I felt like they were carving out moments. But where I was skeptical was it felt like, once again, when we do get into the final third, when we do turn the ball over, when we do have dangerous moments, not chances, but moments, we squander them. We end up, misplacing a pass, or the wrong decision is made, or we end up slowing ourselves down with someone passing it behind someone. And we just don't look that clinical still. Like that was the case under Ange last season. You know, there's so many times when we get into the final third, we're really not that devastating of a team. So that was my worry, was like 2 goals down. We're not necessarily a team that takes a lot of our chances, you know, so how do we get back into this game? But at the same time, the whole reason I was kind of just frustrated was like, I feel like we were carving out moments. Like we weren't just a dead rubber. We weren't just doing nothing. It wasn't like we were playing especially boring and terrible. We just, in my opinion, were struggling to actually take advantage of any of the opportunities that were coming our way. So I was really torn. And so that's kind of why I feel like you've done a better job of seeing the whole picture of this game, where I've been very like immediately reactionary by feeling like we should have gotten more from that game. And the reason I feel like we should have gotten more was, you know, the 2 goals we conceded, I didn't think were anything special from Brighton. It was more us hurting ourselves. And I felt like we were knocking on the door pretty much the whole game, especially from the get-go. Like the get-go, we could have scored once or twice there in like the first opening minutes before they got their first goal. We were all over them, and felt like we were even all over them after we conceded.
No, we weren't. That's why I do think ultimately it's probably 2 points dropped. But like I said, there's positives. But, you know, look, for me, I must be honest, I think at 2-0 down, was getting very irate. I nearly dropped out of the watch long at one point. I was getting that frustrated.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe the comeback was on. However, that goal that Richarlison scored just before half-time just brought me that little bit of belief back. However, I didn't think we were going to exploit the spaces that we were finding to get at Brighton. I think that was pretty poor all game long. But I just felt if we were going to get the equaliser, it was going to come from a scrappy sort of situation, an own goal or something like that. And it turns out that's what happened. But I think that's where maybe you do have to look at the bigger picture, though, Jack, that, this comeback does show a bit of growth under Thomas Frank. That we've showed there's a bit more resilience and a bit more maybe belief in what we're trying to do. That last year under Ange Postecoglou, for instance, once we conceded, our heads dropped and we completely lost track of the game. We were out of the game, whereas I think this time around, calm heads sort of prevail. It's like, okay, what's happened has happened. Let's get the game back under control. Let's keep going at them. Let's try to, create chances. Now, obviously, in terms of exploiting the spaces that we do find in games, that is a work in progress. That is something that Frank has to work on. And I think that's a massive sort of wake-up call to all Tottenham fans, that this is still a work in progress. I think the hope was bringing in Mawani and Simmons just on deadline day that they were going to solve all of Tottenham's problems straight from the off. And I think, it's maybe a bit of a learning curve that, this is going to take time under Thomas Frank, especially going forward. And I think maybe a couple of weeks down the line, a bit more under this project, maybe this is a game that you do go on and win, Jack. Maybe this sort of test has maybe just come a bit too soon for the attacking side of this team. I think a few weeks down the line, we probably get away with it. But I do want to get on to maybe the 2 goals we conceded, though, Jack. Looking at the goals we conceded, and I think, it's something we didn't really speak about in the post-match reaction, but I do think it's something that I'd be surprised isn't maybe, mentioned by Spurs fans in the reaction to this game, or even sort of highlighted on Twitter, was Vicario on both goals. Unlucky or should have done better? Because I'd make the argument, I think, on the first one-on-one, probably being a bit harsh here. But I think he got rounded too easy. But at the same time, I sort of look back and I go, well, maybe he doesn't want to run the risk of taking a red card so early on, which I can understand on that one. The second one, I do blame Bergvall for the actual goal, but it could have been prevented. I do think Vicario was poor there.
I think on the first one, it's hard for me because we've seen so many one-on-one chances that Vicario has actually done amazing with. Like,
I'm
recall
so used
that.
to expecting him to save them as well.
Yeah, like that game against Chelsea will forever go down as one of the best goalkeeper performances I've ever seen, especially in one-on-ones. Like it was insane how many times he just kept reading the players. And when you think about it, there are a lot of times they kept trying to take it around him and he just read them every time, when doing that. So like, I kind of trust him on that first goal. The second one, I think it's almost like a 50-50 for me between him and Bergvall. Like Bergvall's giveaway is so poor that it was going to lead to a really dangerous chance no matter what. And I think if Vicario saves that with the way that ball was moving, I think we would have been like, incredible save. But the way he did let it in, it was an absolute howler. So I'm just like a little bit split. I think Vicario needs a lot of question marks after that. I think that was one of the worst mistakes I've seen him make, the goal that he let in. But the way that ball was moving, it almost makes me feel like, if he does save that, which he probably should, you would also be kind of saying, wow, what a save, because that ball was really knuckling. That ball was really moving. So I think Vicario deserves a lot of blame for that second goal. But I also want to, which we might bring up, I think, no matter what, that would have ended up in a very dangerous chance because of that giveaway from Bergvall.
No, 100%. I agree with you. In terms of the second goal, and this is where I think maybe Vicario got caught out, and this is where I think maybe he needs to be maybe just a bit more alert and switched on, Jack. He's not the tallest of goalkeepers. And when that ball is moving away from you, it is a harder sort of shot to save because the ball's moving away from you. But I also look at it, I just think from the off, his positioning just looks
He didn't look
slightly off
ready.
to me. It's like, yeah, exactly. He wasn't maybe expecting it or didn't look ready. And I think just a bit more anticipation or being a bit more alert. He probably shifts himself over the other side, by another step or two and probably makes that save. I think he got caught out because he's not the biggest of goalkeepers and the ball was sort of moving away from him. But I do think it's something that maybe people will question coming out of this game. I think it'd be very interesting. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section below. Harsh or fair? Let me know. Also, I want to talk about Kudos, Jack, today as well. He sort of revived the comeback 2 goal involvements today. Both goals came off him. The first one to Richarlison, and the second one a good cross into the box that Van Hecke ended up turning into the back of his own net. I mean, constant threat throughout. How good was Kudos today?
I think he once again showed that he's probably the most reliable player to hold up the ball for Spurs, more reliable than the striker, more reliable than our left winger. He always seems to be able to retain possession. He rarely loses it. When he does lose it, it's probably just because he has 40 players around him and, he has to sort of, produce again, some crazy magic. But I felt like he really grew into the game. I think he started off strongly, but then, like, as sort of we were just desperate to get back into the game, he just kept relentlessly running at his man. And it was something that we just always criticized wingers last season about. We criticized Johnson, of course, about it. Sometimes we criticize Sonny about it as well. Just that unwillingness to just run at their fullback, take them on, take it down the byline, cut inside, create separation, create a bit of chaos. This guy is just so brave with the way that he does it. Every time he turns to face his fullback and look to burn them, look to skin them. And he just did it time and time and time again in that game. And I think if we don't have Kudos in this team, I think we really struggle to create anything in the wide areas. He is just a menace. And it feels good to see him getting a lot of praise after this game. I think he's already gotten a lot of praise, but this game just reminded us once again that this guy was bought for a reason. He's something that we've been crying out for on that right wing for a few years now.
What I love about this kid, Jack, is he just does exactly what I want my winger to do.
Exactly.
And nowadays everyone's going on about XG and, does he score enough goals? First and foremost, the winger's job is to hold up the ball. Does that better than any player across the front line. I was saying in the pre-match build-up or post-match reaction to the game, that he should be putting on a clinic one Monday morning for everybody across that front line. This is how you hold up the ball. And, you do a Wayne Rooney street strike or get them to drop it from the top of the building. This is how you do it. This is how you control the ball. But what I love about him is he then separates himself after holding it up. He gets turned on the ball and he runs at his player. He does not give a fullback an easy day. You compare his fullback compared to the fullback that played over on the other side up against Udebur and Johnson, night and day the trouble that Kudos gave them. Every time he gets on the ball, that fullback knows he's going to have to do his job, which is bloody defend. And Kudos makes it difficult. He gets at the ball, he runs at them, and he puts the ball in the box. He creates chances. Now, look, I think on another day, Richarlison's probably more on it, reads the crosses better, and we have a bit more presence in the box. I think maybe we convert a couple more of them chances. But today, the 2 goals happened purely because of his endeavors, getting on the ball single-handedly and taking the game to them. Too many times last year, I've seen wingers get on the ball. Like, for instance, Johnson today came on. Every touch he took went backwards. Every pass he made went backwards. Night and day compared to Kudos. So for me, I'm absolutely delighted he's starting to get the plaudits. And look, I only think it's a matter of time before he actually scores his first goal in a competitive goal in a Tottenham Hotspur shirt as well. I do think that's coming. But what I would say to the Mo Kudos, keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully get Shavins in the 10, get some sort of consistency down that left-hand side, and we will be cooking. But he is the shining light, and he's the sole reason going forward that we actually got something out of this game today. And that's exactly what we brought him to do, to be that sort of game changer, run at the opposition and take the game to them. He does exactly what wingers should be doing. So fair play to him, a great performance. Now, we do have to get in and talk about some of the changes that Thomas Frank did make, Jack. He made 3 changes from the Villarreal game. Adogi came in for Spence, which we're going to get onto. Great call by Frank on that one. Adogi was immense today. Paulinho came in from Sarr again, another one that maybe isn't as, what we just say, what's the right word? Topical or controversial, the right word.
Yeah, controversial.
The other one, Udebur came in for Xavi Simons. Now, look, the question has to be asked. Did Frank get it wrong not starting Xavi Simons? And how much better did we look when he came on? Because he's another part of the reason why we got, the comeback happened, because he got on the ball and went direct at them.
Yeah, I think it was less controversial without any hindsight or anything. It was less controversial to leave Bergwall in the team because he was playing so well before that. Whereas Odebear, bringing him into the game felt like a big call, felt like a slight risk. I did compliment Frank, saying he's given guys opportunities that are on the periphery of the squad. This is something previous managers just haven't done. And so then people who have said, oh, he needs a run of games, he needs an opportunity to show his worth. Frank is doing that. Like, he's giving guys opportunities that are on the periphery of the squad. But this time around, it probably did come back to bite him. He could have probably gone with Xavi Simons on the left, Bergvall through the middle. Let's say Bergvall still puts up a stinker of a performance. He could then move Xavi in the middle,
Yeah.
bring on Bergvall, in the second half, and then he would probably be less criticized, for that decision. But I'd say that was something that maybe will come back to haunt him, is not playing Xavi Simons to begin with, because that was part of the reason we got back into the game. We just felt like all of a sudden we just offered more of a real threat when going forward, whereas before we were like definitely putting pressure on Brighton, but we were missing just that creative presence. We were missing that guy who could actually hold on to the ball and retain possession for us. And I think Xavi Simons was definitely someone who probably should have started the game off to begin with. But I did compliment Frank because he has rotated when other managers haven't.
I do agree with you in terms of he does deserve, plaudits for making changes and, maybe realizing, this player might be a bit off it today. And you look, he got away with it in other games, right? Left Paulini out against Villarreal. Got away with it, barely, but got away with it. Made changes to the squad against Burnley from the game PSG. Went and beaten them. So when he has made changes, they have sort of worked and he has got away with it, which would only, breed more confidence into him in terms of making them changes. However, today I think he got that one wrong. And I think maybe we paid the price for it today, to be honest with you. Udeberg did give away the ball sloppily for the first goal, which sort of led to the downfall, for the first 20, 30 minutes. And I just think it just didn't work. Like, I don't understand it. For me, I think he could have held off and said, Udeberg, you're training well, but you've got Wednesday night. That's your chance to make your mark. I think that's when he could have made as many changes as he wanted Wednesday night. And no Spurs fan would have complained, and I don't think it would have come back to bite him. But the fact that we spent so much money on Xavi Simons, and the reason why is because we're lackluster going forward. He doesn't trust Udeberg, he doesn't trust Tell, he doesn't trust Johnson. That's why he was hammering at the board to go and get these sort of players in. And then we bring him in, and then all of a sudden, in one of our biggest away games to date, he makes a change that was just strange. I get Udeberg's training well, but then tell him, you're going to get minutes today. If the minute one of them ain't performing, you're on. Be jumping at the bit, be ready, go and make a difference. He didn't need to jump him straight into the starting lineup. And I think not having Xavi Simons there was a huge mistake, because to your point, as soon as he came onto the pitch, he gave us that bit of calmness going forward. He got on the ball, he could take players out of the game, draw players into him. But not only that, then he has the passing, the ability to be able to complete them passes as well. You look at Bergvall through the middle for the first half. He didn't really operate through the middle. He operated as another winger down that right-hand side for the majority of the first half. We were left with no presence in the midfield. Where Xavi Simons, when he came in, he got on the ball in the middle, and he sort of caused problems for Brighton, punting the ball into Richarlison's feet, perfectly waited for the guy to be able to held up. For the second goal, it was him that drew players in, created space for Kudos, and delivered an perfectly executed pass out to him. And I just can't help but think as well, if we had Xavi Simons down the left for them opening few minutes, we probably would have punished Brighton and went 1-0 up. And I just think that's where maybe he's gone a bit too far with the rotational changes. And today I think it's come back to bite us.
Yeah, I think you had that down correctly. I think it's a risk that has worked for him before and has probably benefited the squad morale and just, the belief from all the players that are underneath him right now. But it's also comes with a risk, and I think today he found out that risk, was taken, and it wasn't worth it. Maybe
I think he just needs to realize you can't rely on Udeberg, you can't rely on Tell, and you can't rely on Brennan Johnson. You just can't rely on these guys. You're going to have to start, unfortunately, across your front line, your best players in the biggest and hardest games.
Did he have to learn the hard way, do you think, with an example like this? Maybe it just had to happen at some point. Because with West Ham, he got away with it. With Matisse Tell, we still won the game. We were knocking on the door the whole game. We won 3-0, so you kind of just think, oh, worked out, great move. Yeah. And then this time, maybe he learned the lesson.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's learned the lesson. He's learned it the hard way today. But I suppose, the good thing is, again, at least we didn't lose. We salvaged something from it. So it's a lesson learned while picking up a point, I suppose.
Yeah.
Also, just a side note, what did you make of Dozie's long-awaited return to the lineup? He looked sharp, in my opinion. And off the back of that performance, I have no doubt many people will be calling for him to go straight back into that lineup.
Good problem to have, I guess. Jet Spence, Udogie, Pedro Porro, all been playing so well. I thought Pedro Porro also secretly had a pretty good
Yeah,
game, actually, defensively and in possession. But Udogie was better than Pedro Porro. Udogie, not only defensively, was an absolute monster, he also was probably not as guilty as he'd been in the past of bad giveaways,
he's a
sloppy
good
sort
ball
of,
forward.
decision making. He was a threat going forward. There were a few times when he kind of was on his own and just had to carry it past his defender into the box, created some attacking threats at times. He just had a very good two-sided game, defensively solid, but was
Yeah.
also a threat going forward and really wasn't as guilty like Bergvall and some of the others of the bad giveaways. I can't really recall too many bad giveaways from Udogie in this game. He had one of the best performances I've seen from him in a long time, to be honest.
I think he was flawless today. I don't think he put a foot wrong. I
Yeah.
think, I think he basically have just reminded everybody, don't sleep on me. Don't forget how good I am defensively. And when I'm on it, I can't play going forward. And I think, he brought a bit of he was strong down that left-hand side today. He was very strong. It was a good performance, and I think he's done himself no harm, and he's given Frank certainly a massive headache moving forward. Who is his best fullback pairing? And, fair play to Destiny Udogie. That's all you could ask of him coming out of today's game. Now, whether he walks straight back into the lineup, ahead of Jed Spence or Pedro Porro, that remains to be seen, but he's asking the question, and that's all you can ask when these guys are given their opportunity. Jack, I don't usually do this, but before we maybe head in to get your man the match, is there anything else maybe you want to touch on or anything that maybe you think I've missed in this post-match reaction that we need to talk about, or we just go on to man the match?
The only thing I'd mention, I thought Romero, despite potentially being involved in the first goal, I thought he actually had a very good second
Solid.
half. He played some amazing passes that I think should have been taken advantage of. Bergwall had one of those that he absolutely should have had a better touch and maybe could have potentially created a goal from it. But he also, I felt like, stopped a few dangerous moments in this game, Romero, from us conceding
Yeah.
a third goal, actually. So just wanted to shout him out in the second half. Not really in the first half, but in the second half.
No, I agree with you. I thought, look, in general, I think Romero had a pretty good game, getting tight to his man, getting in tackles where he could, getting himself in the right to be able to make some clearances. I agree with you. I think Pedro Porro, some good deliveries,
Yeah,
putting
me
into
too.
the box, and defensively solid. Matoma didn't really cause us too many problems today. So I think two good performances there for sure. I think Bergvall, look, I'm not going to grate on the kid, but I think he's still got a lot to learn. Despite him being enthusiastic and affecting games like today just remind you he's still got a long way to go in terms of bringing composure and that consistency. But Jack, who gets your man the match today? Was it Kudos for his impact on the game, Udogie for, his impact down the left-hand side, or someone completely else who stood out for you today?
I think it is going to be Kudos just because he was just so positive and brave, I think, just throughout the game. Even when we were 2-0 down, the guy just never stopped. And he's
Yeah,
also, I think, working very hard out of possession as well. Like he doesn't really,
yeah,
don't really ever call him out for like, lacking in the press or like maybe taking, a bit of a break, and maybe doing it at a half-assed effort. Like he's always helping out defensively, either pressing or helping out Pedro Porro. And then in possession today, he just barely did any. He almost kind of like Udogie, almost had pretty much a flawless game. I felt like in possession, he was just so good and so reliable. And
mm,
when we're chasing a goal, sometimes guys go hiding. Some people don't want to
yeah.
take on that responsibility. He really just continued to grow and grow and grow in the game and just like was just relentless at taking on his man, like you said. And it's just something we've been crying out for so long on the wing. And it shows that there are players out there that can do that, like him.
100%. You look, hunger, desire to make an impact. I'm going to tag team Kudos with you. I'm not sure that's maybe his dream or his desire, but I'm tagging along with that one, Jack. I agree with you, man. The match, when maybe things weren't going right going forward, he didn't let his head drop. And I think you made a massive point there that he grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck and still had the desire and the hunger to go and make an impact and go and chase something out of the game. So I think he's got to be Tottenham's man the match today.
Yeah.
So look, Spurs fans, lots to unpack from that roller coaster at the Amex. Was it a step forward or a reminder we've still got work to do? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. I want to hear your take on the comeback, the lineup decisions, and who stood out for you today. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed the reaction and subscribe for more Spurs content after every single game. We go again Wednesday night against
Yep.
Doncaster. Until then, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.